So, have you ever wondered why relationships can feel so heavy, even when you care really deeply about that person? Whether it's family or marriage, friendships, coworkers, sometimes the connection feels way harder than it should. So, today I'm going to walk you through why relationships feel hard and what's happening beneath the surface when they do. This is a very, very big and a very important topic. So it's truly my honor to really sit in this space because I've overcome and learned so much in this area myself. I kind of lived in the world where I was like, why is everybody so mean? Why are they so mean? Why do they have to act like that? Why do they have to do that? Why? And I was like always tense and anxious, and then I rehashed the conversation with every single person I knew. So I'm staying in that drama triangle. And honestly, it consumed so much time in my life that is like preventing me from doing really and getting in a creative space and being happy and joyous. And that is positivity is my number one in my strength finders. When I took that test, I was like, well, dang, no wonder I'm so uneasy when I'm in those situations. So we're going to learn how to take control of what we can control. And that's going to be how we're going to react. So I want you guys, when I'm going through this presentation today, I want you guys to think of that person. Okay, don't put it in the chat. Don't like say it out loud. This is for you in your own mind right now. Think of that person that challenges you because I don't want this to just be a presentation you're listening to. I want you to apply it towards yourself. I'm hoping that at the end of this 15 minutes, you're going to walk away and feel like I've got some tangible tips and tools that I can apply to help me control what I can control. Okay, so have you ever thought, why does it feel so hard when I care so much? I just sometimes there's these underlying things of like, I just want to be liked. I want them to like me. Why can't they just like me? And why are they so challenging? And why do they have to burst out every single time that I say something? I don't get it. Okay. And have you ever left feeling guilty for feeling frustrated? What's wrong with me? What am I doing wrong? Okay, we're going to dive into this today, you guys. So, the first step is understanding what's happening. And if you've been on my calls the last couple of months, you hear me say this all the time: location, location, location. And I say that for a reason because when you in a place where you're being triggered or something is happening, if we can get out of the emotional place and go back into the place of location, where am I right now? What am I noticing? What am I feeling? This first step, right, you guys, of awareness is what's going to help you to get grounded instead of emotional. Okay, so just notice if any of these things feel familiar to you. You care deeply, but you feel frustrated. You feel misunderstood or unseen. You replay conversations afterwards over and over and over again, sometimes for days, weeks, years. Does that feel familiar to anybody? You wonder why it has to feel so heavy. And small moments, sometimes they feel bigger than they should. And then sometimes you walk away feeling emotionally drained. Okay? Just locate yourself right now. And I want you to think about a conversation recently that maybe you've had more than once with somebody, and you say things calmly and you set yourself up and you psych yourself up, and then it doesn't go exactly how you had planned it to go, and they respond defensively. Okay, it's the same conversation, it's the same person, and it's the same outcome. Could you imagine where some of this frustration could be coming from? So you walk away and you're thinking, why can't we ever just talk about this without turning it into something? Okay. I want you to recognize something really quick. What do you usually feel first? Okay. Do you feel frustration? Do you feel sadness? Do you feel just shut down? You just shut yourself down. Okay. We're locating ourselves right now. So I want you to ask yourself, what's the part that feels the hardest to you? Is it the moment itself, or is it the emotional weight that you're carrying afterwards? Okay. Right now, you guys, we are still just building an awareness because, well, I'm not going to jump ahead here. Let's keep going. Now, let's talk about what's really happening. We all have different needs, you guys. Okay. And then sometimes our needs collide. We've all got different communication styles, and we're going to really dive into this in a couple of weeks. We've got different expectations. And the biggest one, we've got different stress responses. Okay. Now, just this slide alone, does that help you to realize that, okay, If I think about factually what's happening, then I'm going to maybe be able to get out of the emotional triangle a little bit easier. Okay. So instead of blowing up or going to the reactive state, we're going to kind of sit in this space and understand. So when needs, hold on a second, it's got to move. So when needs and the styles collide, it can feel very personal, even when it's not. Okay, so what's actually colliding is the different needs, right? So let's look at these pictures of these people. There's somebody that's like, I need to fix this. They're the fixer. There's somebody that's like, I just need to be understood. I need reassurance. I need to be right. I just need clarity. Now, we all have different needs and everybody communicates in a different way. And like I mentioned earlier, we all have different stress responses. So, what the questions are going to be that you're going to want to ask when tension's going to show up is, what do you usually want most? Okay. And what do you think the other person might be needing in that moment? So, it's like telling the story from the other person's perspective, right? Step into their shoes, that place of like empathy. Step in their shoes because sometimes we just want to lash out like what's wrong with them. This is such a hard story. Or it's such a hard thing to do, but it is so life changing. I was in a workshop once many, many years ago, and they said, tell me, like, so you partnered up with somebody, tell the story of like just a horrible, like, whatever, a person that challenges you the most, like a story that happened where there's just so much conflict. And then they made us tell the story from the other person's shoes. And I'm going to tell you what, I will never forget that. That probably happened 20 years ago. No, yeah, probably 20 years ago. And I physically remember where I was sitting, what the room looked like in that moment, and exactly how I felt. I'd never done that before. And what that started showing me is to slow down before I start talking and slow down before I start reacting to somebody, thinking about how is that going to impact that person, right? And then also, what are they thinking? How could I have shown up differently? This is where we take radical responsibility. We can't change them, but we can be radically responsible for the way that we are going to show up in the situation. It's a game changer, and I highly recommend doing that. Now, questions to ask yourself. Who affects you emotionally more than most people? Again, just answer this inside yourself, or you might want to start a new little journal or a notebook that you can start talking or writing some of these things down and reflecting. Who is that person for you? Okay. And with whom do you feel the most reactive or sensitive in your life? Okay, this is about breaking through, breaking free from this. So it's important to not just be sitting. It's important to say, okay, at the end of this 4-week series, I want to make this relationship better for myself, not to make it better because you're going to expect a different expectation of them, but for yourself. Okay, now let's talk about the people that are the closest to you. Sometimes we get the story backwards where we think it should be easier because they're closer to us. But honestly, the closer someone is to you, the less emotional armor that you've got on. Because what closeness does is it lowers your emotional protection, right? Our expectations increase, sensitivity increases. Would you agree there? And that means that words, they land deeper. We take them more personally. Their tone matters, right? Reactions, they happen faster. We become less patient with those that we love the most and that are closest to us. And familiar relationships, guess what they do? They activate old responses. So sometimes, even though we're like, you make up after an argument or I'm sorry, but man, it happens again and boom, it's going to activate something in you that you're going to feel like, wait a minute, we already had this conversation. We did this. However, we're going to be aware of this happening. Okay. So we're going to talk a little bit about limiting beliefs, and this is going to be the story behind the reaction. We're investigating, we're pulling out a magnifying glass and digging a little bit deeper into what's happening in the dialogue we're telling ourselves. Okay, so sometimes it is, I'm not being heard, or why am I the one that always has to adjust? Okay, why do I care more than you? Why is it that we can have this conversation, you can walk away from it totally unaffected, but I'm deeply, deeply affected? Why do those things happen? Okay. So old beliefs that have happened to us in our past are shaping your current reactions to the situation at hand. Okay. This is going deep, you guys. Okay. And we're going to dig into this. This is only week one. We're going to go deep because this is the reason why we react the way we react and why we are triggered the way we are triggered. So let's look at some core areas where limiting beliefs are being formed. Childhood experiences, okay? Attachment and early relationships that you've had in the past. Repeated emotional experiences. Trauma or high stress moments. Social conditioning and culture. Authority figures and role models that you've had in your life. Comparison and social feedback to other people, relationship patterns in adulthood, even things that other relationships you've been in, health and body experiences, moments of interpretation, the way you interpreted something happening. Okay. So these are some things about where they're forming and what it comes from. Now, what's going to help? And this is going to be without fixing them because we think we can fix them. So therefore, we continue being in conflict. So we don't start by changing the relationship, but we start by understanding ourselves inside the relationship. Okay, how are we showing up? So remember, the awareness is going to come before the action. We're going to become curious instead of judging. And have compassion for yourself in this process, okay? Because nothing changes if nothing changes. But right now, we're slowing down right now to take a look at being curious about what's going on. And some questions to ask yourself are going to be, what shifts when you stop judging your reaction? Okay, we got to take off our boxing gloves and give ourselves grace in this process, or nothing's going to change. All right. We don't want to stay in the drama triangle. We want to show up in the empowerment triangle, which is above the line, below the line. We've all learned this. Now, what happens when you get curious instead? So, again, think about that one person in your mind, and we're going to start applying this to that as you're walking through the process. Now, I want you to know that your hard relationships that you've got in your life, your relationships are not broken. It means that something matters. Okay, it means that there are needs that are present and they're maybe not being met. It means that patterns are surfacing. It's often an invitation to understand ourselves more deeply. So, this is an opportunity, right? We learn the obstacle is the way. This is an opportunity to say, if I could autocorrect myself in this process and not react the way I normally react, how could this affect all the other relationships in my life? So we start with one. And I say start with one, that's an easier one. There's a lot of things that, like, there's past traumas associated with. Do not start there. Okay, just like we were talking about the last couple weeks where we're setting goals. This is a goal, right? And we want to feel accomplished. It's the baby, small micro steps that we're putting into place. Start with someone easy that you're not super emotionally attached to, but you find yourself in a reactive state. Okay. The only thing, you're going to hear me say this all the time, the only thing you can control is how you are going to react to the situation. Okay. So ask yourself questions, be curious. Okay. What might this difficulty be trying to show you right now? What might need understanding instead of fixing? Let's try to mute you, Denise. Okay. When you feel triggered, does it feel bigger than the situation? Okay. And does this reaction remind you of other times that you have felt this way? You might want to screenshot this. All right. These are questions to ask yourself so that you can get more grounded instead of reactive. Now, this week, your homework, don't try to solve your relationships. Okay. Just notice what's showing up for you. This is an awareness. So just kind of sit back and be more reflective. Sit back in that observer's chair and just observe what's going on Start taking notice of what's happening because that's going to be the first step towards real change. So, as you go through your week, I just want you to notice where tension shows up in your relationship and simply get curious about it instead of reacting to it. And next, I want to invite you to watch the next reset on why people closest to you tend to trigger you the most, because that insight is going to help make our next conversation even clearer. So before you go, please be sure to subscribe to my channel and check out the resources that I've got linked below, and I'll see you in the next reset.